Good morning. It's Toby Tompkins, and it's Sunday, July 10th. It's a beautiful morning. I decided to take my morning walk in Central Park and to use that as the inspiration for whatever's going to come out of my mouth in the next few minutes. But I did wake up this morning with a topic on my mind, which is, what do we do when our identity trumps our humanity? And what do I mean by that? I guess what I'm really talking about is that in a lot of societies, and every society created and sustained by man is built on the notion of identity, the notion of I am, we are, you are, y'all are, they are. And that question of identity is powerful because it gives us agency, it gives us permission, it gives us distinction between what is right and what is wrong, what is valid and what is invalid, what is entitled and what is not entitled, what is good and what is bad, what can be trusted and what must be feared. And yet, because if you've traveled as much as I have, you understand that identity is dynamic and fluid, and it is a product of cultures and societies, and therefore it is not a constant. Then we have to look at what lives beyond what came before identity formation and identity politics. And that, to be quite honest, is humanity. It's the ability of one human to be in compassionate, kind, and supportive relationship with another human being or living thing. You know, it's so funny. Black people often say that white people treat animals better than they treat black people. And that is at the root of sort of why we see the environmental movement being a movement that is more deeply and fervently embraced by one group of people versus another, because a lot of it has to do with the identity politics that we still haven't been ready and willing to talk about in the environmental movement. But today I want to kind of have this conversation from the vantage point of what it means as a human being in life, and most particularly as a leader. And also to you beautiful leaders who are out there, what it means to be marked. The places we go in life, the identities we hold in life, can certainly mark us. They can indicate for other people who we are, where we're from, what we believe in, what we stand for. They may not be accurate marks, but they're easy marks, and they're the foundation of bias and stereotypes and collective thought and focus groups, etc., etc. But the real mark, the mark that really speaks to your humanity, is marked not by who you are, but by how you show up. It's by what you bring, what you demonstrate, what you contribute. It's marked by compassion. It's marked by humility, and it's marked by optimism. Those are 3 of the 5 qualities of beautiful leaders. And so what I want to do is say that if you understand the difference between identities in America, and you pay attention to who you see as a victim, where and why you place blame, and where and why you assign fault, then you could actually be about the good business of trumping identity in favor of humanity. Because, you know, a victim, and there are some really interesting victim politics going on right now in our society. You can't get away from it. It's been going on all along. But no matter what you say, a victim is a person who's been harmed in some way, shape, or form. They could have been injured, they could have been killed, and it's as a result of somebody else's action. A crime, an accident, a sacrifice, or even an offering. And it happens every single day. The lives of innocent people are offered up in the protection of another group's or another identity's needs or comfort zones, or just fundamental social and structural advantage, power. And so when we're trying to trump identity in favor of humanity, then we have to be very, very careful not to blame the victim, and to understand that victimhood is different from being a target of somebody else's rage or aggression. The next thing I want to talk about is blame, because we live in very, very much a blame culture. And blame is the first doorway to defeat. It was really interesting, my very first video when I woke up in St. Thomas and saw what was going on in Minnesota after having gone to bed and the night before, looking at what had happened in Baton Rouge. A couple of friends of mine called me, because the truth is I've never done a Facebook Live, anything. And what they heard in my humanity was defeat. And they heard in the quivering in my voice that I was ready to give up. And I was really ready to give up. I was like, you know, it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter how much compassion or humility or optimism I try to bring into my world every day. This is still the result. And, you know, when you give up, you don't really have a need for humanity. When you feel defeated, that becomes your identity, and that becomes your cause. And so I think that when we look at why we are assigning blame, why we are finding fault or wrong, why we continue, those of us who are not members of a community, to place blame or fault when tragedy falls upon a community, to say it's your fault, you're the victim, you brought this on yourself. And the fact that media perpetrates that, because of course that's a strategy for trauma, and trauma freezes people. It locks us in to the message so that we can't break free from it. So part of how we must trump identity and embrace humanity is by responding to blame from a place of compassion, and most importantly from a place of humility, by recognizing that you may not understand everything that's going on in the moment that you want to place blame. And so therefore, pause. Don't do it. Don't do it. Instead, try and figure out what's wrong, what happened, and how we can get to a better place. You would do it if you saw a dog lying in the middle of the street. You wouldn't say, oh, that's the dog's fault, he got hit by the car. You would instead say, what do I need to do to help this injured animal get safely to care? And the other thing I want to talk about before I close is fault. And you know, I never really understood what fault is in the sort of way in which we use it in our society and as a part of our identity formation. But it really is that unattractive and sometimes unnecessary, unsatisfactory feature that is used to point out what's wrong with a person. It's fault finding. And a lot of what's going on in the media today is about finding fault, placing blame, and blaming the victims. And so if you want to lead more beautifully in your every single day and in your community, you must bring forward the compassion, the humility, and the optimism within yourself, in your actions and interactions with other people, to resist victimization, to resist placing blame, and to resist finding fault. Okay? You know, the last thing I want to say about being marked as a person or as a thing is that we're marked in two ways. And you know, standing behind me is a tree, and it's pretty identifiable to you as a tree. It looks like a tree. It's tall, has green leaves, and a robust trunk. But the reality is that it also has other qualities, other characteristics that make it a significant player in our humanity because it produces oxygen for its environment. It makes a vital contribution to the wellness and the balance and the serenity of this planet. And so ask yourself, if you were a tree, what would you want to be marked by? By your bark and by your leaves, or by the contribution that you make to the ecology of the planet? And if you can answer that question for the tree, then I know you can answer that question from within yourself. So, you know what I've asked? I've asked you to take some protest in your life today. And at the hour of 7 p.m. Eastern Time, or wherever the prime time hour is, wherever you are, to take the first 15 minutes of that prime time hour and turn off all of your social media and go out and disconnect. Turn it off to connect. Go out and connect with someone. Even if you go take a walk, go smile at someone. As I was walking here this morning, someone did something very interesting. There was an older African-American gentleman in my neighborhood in Harlem at about 7 a.m. this morning who was literally walking up and down the street asking people if he could pray with them. Okay? That was a man whose internal marks were very clear for me as I walked past him in the street. I didn't see him as just a black man. I saw him as a good and decent and compassionate and caring citizen. That's the mark that lifts up our humanity. So this is all I can do. I love you all very much. I want you to have a great day. I'll be here tomorrow. Take care.